face coverings, head coverings, God, and the CDC. In the past 100 years, the world has by and large thrown away the practice of the Christian woman's head covering. Very few have had the nerve to stand against the pressure of the larger culture and obey God instead of going with the flow. People just don't like to be different in that way. It's funny though, how people don't mind being different in ways that are rebellious and cool. But they're so ashamed to stand out and to stand up for Jesus. And I feel this pressure sometimes as well. But in 2020, we've seen so many people totally change their appearance and religiously wear face coverings while in public. It's crazy to stop and think about it. So few Christian women are willing to do what God says and wear a head covering. But here in 2020, people have started covering their faces by the millions. Face masks make it hard to breathe, hard to recognize people, hard to understand people, hard to read people's expressions, and are just plain inconvenient. Since it is such a pain to wear a face covering, why are people religiously doing it by the millions? In short, we believe that the CDC has our good in mind. If they tell us to do something, we're not trying to explain away why we don't need to do it. No, we're convinced that it's for our good and for the good of those around us, especially those within 6 feet. It's said to be the noble thing, the caring thing to do, the brave thing to do. It's said to be the loving thing, and people embrace it by the millions. Why? Because we believe that the CDC knows what is good for us. We believe them to be a credible authority on the subject, and so in faith, we do as they say. But what about what God says about the head covering? Those who don't practice it, deep down, really don't believe that God has our good in mind in what He asks us to do. So we just think about the inconvenience of it, and then we start making excuses as to why it's not necessary to do what God says. But I want to make it clear that when God says what to do, and when He tells us to do something, He has our good in mind. Yes, He does. God always has our good in mind. There's no selfishness in it. You know, when God says, "For if the woman be not covered, let her also be shorn. But if it be a shame for a woman to be shorn or shaven, let her be covered." When God says that, there's no selfishness in it. There are no pharmaceutical companies lobbying for what is His guideline and what His guidelines should be. There's no pharmaceutical companies in that, and there are no business gains to be made by vaccines in what God is telling us to do. God says, let her be covered. God always has our good in mind. The CDC, sometimes they make this regulation and they change it back, but God always knows what He's talking about, and His rules never change, and it's for our good. Millions of people have been willing to radically change the way they appear in public this year, 2020, and wear a face covering because of the CDC. But who is willing to obey God's word, even if it means changing your appearance? Or who is willing to continue to look odd, to obey the Bible in our increasingly ungodly world? Let me know if you're willing to be one of those brave souls, those loving and noble souls, in the comment section below. We'll talk to you later.